Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Area Sales Manager Rodney Roberts from North Central Missouri has an update on his territory. Rodney highlights how farmers in his area handled last year and how they're managing this year's weather conditions and crops. Rodney describes how being a CCA puts you one step ahead in the industry, and find out what Merschman Soybean Varieties farmers are growing in Rodney's area.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Turk, but we also have a special guest. Lynn, would you please introduce that special guest?
Yeah, so today we have Rodney Roberts. He's our Area 10 Area Sales Manager, and he is located in Trenton, Missouri. And Rodney, do you want to just kind of describe your area and then to our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you all for having me here this morning. It's a nice 24 degrees with 2 inches of snow here in Trenton, Missouri this morning. And 2 days ago it was 62 and people were thinking about planting corn. But again, as Missouri goes, we've had a little delay. Trenton, Missouri is located here in north central Missouri, about 35 miles south of the Iowa border, Highway 65, right in the center of the state. We've got a lot of rolling hill ground, a lot of bottoms that's farmed around here. Pretty big cattle country. I've been selling seed for 32 years and spent half of my career at Merschman Seeds, the last 16 years, which has been very beneficial to me, and very proud to work for a family-owned seed company that takes pride in their product and has been one of the greatest innovators in bringing new traits to the market in the last century.
That's absolutely correct, Rodney. One of the questions I always like to ask to get the ball rolling here is, what was the year like for you last year in comparison to a typical year? And I know a typical year isn't something that we see. It doesn't seem like we see hardly ever, but how was your year last year, and what kind of challenges did farmers have in your area?
Last year, we had an early zone that about 50% of the corn acres were planted in. And then we had a delay of about 2.5 weeks, and people went back to the field, what I would call a little bit late for planting corn. But as it turned out, we had absolutely perfect weather conditions after that. At least in a 25 to 40 mile radius of Trenton, let's put it that way. When you got a little bit south of my territory towards the Missouri River and you went west towards the St. Joe area, things got quite a bit drier than what they were here. But right in our local area, farmers enjoyed and seen probably the crop of a lifetime here.
That's always exciting because, as we know, in your area, that's not normal, is it?
No, we have huge swings in crops here. It wouldn't be uncommon in today's world to see 200 bushel corn one year. It could be 120 the next, and even 60 to 80 the year after that. Corn's our most difficult crop to manage and to take care of.
And that's all based off moisture, correct?
It's all based upon moisture.
Another thing, Rodney, in your territory is you have a lot of tributaries, a lot of small rivers that get pretty wild when you get excessive rain.
We really do have that, and when we get those fronts that come through and go through Topeka, Kansas, and up across Omaha and into southern Iowa, it hits that Thompson and Grand River drainage area and really filters down through my area pretty hard. 5-6 inch rain puts a lot of these rivers and creeks at a extreme flood stage pretty quickly. And then if we continue with a week of rain, it seems like water piles up at the Missouri River at Brunswick and just starts backing up till we get to the Trenton area. When we get north of the Trenton area, we have what I would call flash flooding that'll stay on us for a day, but by the time you get to the south of Trenton to the Chillicothe, Missouri area, we can have sustained flooding there that can set in for 2 and 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed that down in Chillicothe years and years ago. And I remember a farmer couldn't get his planter out, so he chained it to a tree because the water was coming up so fast to keep it from being washed away. So that Chillicothe area can get pretty wild.
The evolution of flooding and things, the floods get worse, it seems like, as time goes on. And when I first started in the business back in 1991, I mean, a lot of that area had already been levied. It was levied in the 1960s and 1970s. But ever since then, they've continued to increase and levy those areas, and they've tightened up the area that the water can overflow in. So when we have a flood, it's a major drastic event.
So Rodney, basically, you have soup to nuts. You got too much water or too dry. I mean, and everything in between. So how do you manage that with products, and what's working and what's not?
Well, as you already know, and a lot of people know, I mean, soybeans are a lot more forgiving than corn. So with that being said, it's, especially in the bottomlands, I'd say that there's a good, probably 90% of those acres are planted to soybeans, 10% to corn. When you get up into the hills, for conservation reasons, I mean, some farmers grow a 50-50 corn soybean rotation on those highly erodible lands. Other people do more of a 2 years of soybeans, 1 year of corn, and that's typically how we roll here. So the corn acres that are planted here, I mean, we've got a select group of farmers that manage their corn very intensively. They put their corn on their very best acres, and they tend to grow a decent crop as long as Mother Nature gives them the water. And then we've got another group, say, that just has to grow corn to stay in compliance with the government, to keep their erosion under control, to keep their crop insurance, to stay in the government programs. And those acres tend to be lower yielding and less managed.
So let's talk about corn just a little bit, Rodney. Other than our small plot here in West Point, you had the opportunity to look at some conventional versions of some Merschman corn that we have coming out in the future. Talk about what you're looking for in a Merschman corn variety, and what kind of excites you about some of these new PowerCore lines.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see the new launch of the Merschman corn program, because it's one of the things that I think I can do very well to help my customers out. Corn here in north central Missouri is basically, no one does testing here in the state of Missouri, and if they do testing, they do it down near Malta Bend, Missouri, which is in lowest soil, which is very much different than what we have. And from what I know, most of the corn breeding programs out there are developed somewhere between Gothenburg, Nebraska, and Chicago, Illinois, on the I-80 corridor. And those products are selected in an environment that are much different than what ours are, and in soil types that are much different than ours. And what I've seen over the years with corn is corn inbreds need to be picked very specifically for the type of soil that you have, because some of those products require much higher phosphate, much higher potassium levels. They require higher nitrogen levels or nitrogen applications that have been spread out, and some of them are sensitive to organic matter. And here in north central Missouri, I mean, we've got soils that range in organic matter anywhere from 4.5% to basically 0.5%. And a lot of common organic matters on these hills would be somewhere around 2.5%. Most of those plants most of the corn varieties that are out there were grown and selected on soils that were much more fertile than what we have with the higher organic matter. And with that, I think we need to go in, and one of the things that I can do as a sales rep and agronomist is help screen some of these products on some of my own acres, and plant them and see which ones perform with our soil types the best. And that takes a lot of guesswork out of it for the customer, because when the customer's got over $1,000 an acre in expenses, we don't have room for mistakes.
You're exactly correct. So I think I'd have to go total it back up, but you're probably going to be at least in 2 different locations, possibly 3, talking with Skip. You're going to be looking at potentially like 19 different corn numbers that we have to range from 106 to like 116 day. And basically we're screening for products that have extreme guts in those areas where lack of rainfall can be a problem. And then, a perfect year like what you had last year where APHs were 35, 40 bushel higher than normal, right?
That's correct. And one of the things that I see out of a lot of these new corn varieties, and I've screened some corn varieties from some other companies, looked at other companies' products, and their agronomists will tell us, that this corn product should be, 10 foot tall, and we'll put it on our soil types and it's only 6 foot tall. And so it makes, we have a lot of terrace ground, a lot of thin clay ground, and you need a certain ear set so you can get the corn head under the ear and get it combined. And some of the products that are out there evolving in the marketplace today are making that quite challenging for people in our area. Those shorter style plants may be very high, very, very high yielding in certain environments, but you still have to be able to harvest them. I like the idea of screening as many as 19 different varieties coming out of our program, because a lot of those products that we're picking are like Ben says, they're products that's going to have guts. They're flex products. A lot of the products that's been put upon us for the last 10, 15 years has been determinate or semi-determinate products. And those products tend to need to be planted at much higher populations than what the typical farmer here in north central Missouri plants at. And that's another thing that I guess I should address on. I always ask every year when I have my meeting, I try to ask, what population are you planting corn at? And for years, that always landed in somewhere around 28,500. And I've seen over the last 2 years, I think people are going on to 30,000. Back 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, we had people trying here to plant populations 36, 38,000. We had a lot of bad weather events, dry weather, and when it got dry at those high populations, the plants would cannibalize themselves and collapse. And it caused people to rethink and basically take a step back in time and lower those populations. And I think we all know we got to have 2 things. We either got to have a product that flexes well at a lower population, and if it doesn't flex well, then we have to have more plants.
You are absolutely correct there. So looking into this coming year, on top of the corn varieties that you're going to be testing, you're going to be testing some Merschman beans. What are some of the varieties that work really well in your environment that we already have in the lineup? And what are you kind of excited to be testing for next year? What do you look for in a soybean plant?
The old, I say old, the Kennedy 1936 that we currently have in line, and the Austin are 2 very solid products. It's been knock out solid products. The Eisenhower product was a very solid product that we're replacing this year with a new Eisenhower. But the product that I'm most excited about seeing coming back into the lineup is the first Enlist E3 Truman, the 2338. And back in 2009, we sold the first Liberty Link soybeans, the Truman 938. It was a very, very solid product, sold hundreds of thousands of units of them. People adapted to them quickly and liked them. And then a few years later, we come with 1438. People liked it even better. I think there's people here in my area that would still plant that soybean bean if we had it. But the technology that we've got with Enlist E3 is much better to control weeds with. We moved on to the was it 2038 with the GT27 trait. And I guess if that product had probably come a little quicker than what it came, and if the folks at Bayer would have come along with the herbicide and everything for us to use with that product would have adapted very well for us, and we could have used it. But 3.8 maturity is where it's at right here in my area for yield. And from what I've seen, this new 2338, that product pretty much mimics the style of plant that the 1438 was, which is perfect for our area. It worked on hills, bottoms, early planting, late planting. I think that's just going to be a superb knock it out of the ballpark product for us.
When Joe, when you first started naming the Trumans, it's always had to be a product that works really well in Missouri, correct?
That's right. We typically focused on a product that had a lot of flexibility on all soil types, whether it's bottom ground or the hill ground. And Truman's been a staple in Missouri. Maybe it's because Harry Truman was from Missouri, so it's like the name just fits Missouri, I tell you. So yes, we expect some good things from the Kennedys and the Trumans and Eisenhowers and the Austins down in Rodney's area this year.
I can tell you that the Truman product line is the only product that I've seen twice in my career that I've seen in fields. Now, I'm not saying whole field averages, but I'm saying that surpassed 100 bushel to the acre. And I seen that in 2014 up near Seymour, Iowa, on a longtime customer, Merschman Seeds, Jerry Fetters. And I seen it again just a year or so later in Chillicothe, Missouri, on Price Farms, Randy and Ben Price there in Chillicothe, and we actually did a video there in Chillicothe when Alex first come on board, and that's very exciting to see products like that, because I can remember growing up in the 70s and the 80s, and 30 and 40 bushel beans were good beans, and to see them hit 100 bushel in large scale areas in the field, that's pretty awesome.
100 bushel, I don't care where you're at, is a good yield, Rodney, wherever you go. So that's pretty incredible.
So Rodney, one of the things that you have is your CCA. How does that help you and help your customers with your sales?
I was actually in the very first class of CCAs in the state of Missouri back in 1993, and at that point in time, the chemical industry were telling people that if you did not have your CCA credentials, you weren't going to be able to make recommendations on the farm, and every business would have to have a certified crop advisor to sell herbicides and make fertilizer recommendations. being a CCA sets you apart from other agronomists that are out there, or other people are quote say they're agronomists, because you actually do have to take a state and federal test, and you have to prove that you know what you're talking about. And that's one thing that in this industry that I've noticed over the years is there's a certain group of people that probably know what they're talking about, and there's another group that are just talking. And but the customers have a lot of confidence. I mean, I think it gives you more credibility. Customers have confidence in what you're saying. You can prove you know what you're saying, and I think being a CCA is good. I think anybody in this business that sells seed or sells herbicides or sells fertilizer, anything agronomy related, if you're serious about your business, you should know enough to get your CCA license.
Yeah, and it just doesn't stop after the test. You have to have continuing education and constant
20 hours a year of continuing education. It's a lifetime commitment. As long as you want to keep your license up to date.
Yeah, so Rodney, besides the CCA and working with Merschman Seeds, what else makes you tick? What are some of the hobbies of Rodney, and what's some of your passions that you like to do outside of work?
I love to farm. I love to garden. I like to see things grow. I like to fish and hunt whenever I have time. Sometimes some of my work projects get in the way of that, but I do enjoy a good fishing trip and a good hunting trip. We try to make sure we can slow things down enough around here that we can have a couple of good gatherings and a good deer season. This year was a very good year for us. Killed some nice deer, had some good hunts, had a lot of people come out and gather around and eat a lot of good food. I like to barbecue and do things like that as well.
Awesome.
I think you've got some Jeeps that you go do some crazy stuff with.
Yeah, my wife and I and some other friends, we go to Colorado. We like to Jeep. If we can do that at least once a year, that's an exciting time. I like to go out on southwest Colorado and Engineer Pass, Black Bear Pass, that area around Ouray, Lake City, Telluride. Really like that area. Been to Moab one time. Probably I'll go back again sometime whenever I get time, but August is not the time to go. The last time I went was in August. Had a flat tire and I was changing a tire and it was 121 degrees. and I can tell you that's not fat man weather.
Well, I can concur with that as well. That doesn't sound like any fun. So let's transition that into the corny joke and see if we can get Rodney to stick around for your corny joke this week, Joe.
Okay, Rodney, before I get into the corny joke, we want to honor one of our dealers that's retiring this year. His name's Jim Oberruder from Watkins, Iowa. Now let me tell you about this guy, Jim. Jim, first of all, is a super nice guy. I mean, and believe it or not, when I first started here at Merschman Seeds back in 1977, 78, one of my first job was to cover Central Iowa, and one of my customers was Jim Oberruder. So that was 46 years ago, and he was a dealer before I called on him. He actually was probably signed up by a guy named George Eilers. They called him Cadillac George because back then he drove a Cadillac. It was his sales vehicle of preference. And George signed him up, and then George retired shortly after, and I got drafted to take Central Iowa. So Jim Oberruder, another thing that the first time I met him, he had a special car in his garage, and he pulled back the cover off it. It was a '67 red SS Camaro. And man, I was just slobbering all over it because I'm a car guy, and I was really impressed. And to my knowledge, he kept that car. It was his high school car, and he sold it and then bought it back, and then he kept it until just recently. So Jim's a special person. He's always been positive, cordial, always a smile on his face, never complains. Just he couldn't ask for a better dealer, and he's very loyal. And we just want to say thank you for practically 50 years of business with Merschman Seeds, and we sincerely appreciate it, and we wish you the very, very best in a well-deserved retirement. So with that, I'll lead into my corny joke. Now, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, so I thought, well, let's go with a good St. Patrick's Day joke, okay? And if any of you, particularly as you get older, you tend to take maybe a tour or something, a bus tour. If you've ever done a bus tour, it never fails. You get with a bunch of different people, and there's always one on the tour. Never happy, okay? So that's the setting I'm setting up. So a group of Americans were touring Ireland, and one of the women in the group was a real complainer. All she did was complain. The bus seats are uncomfortable. The food is terrible. It's too hot. It's too cold. The accommodations are awful. So the group arrived at the site of the famous Blarney Stone. And they said, good luck will follow all of your days if you kiss the Blarney Stone, is what the guide told them. Unfortunately, today it's being cleaned, so no one will be able to kiss it. Perhaps we can come back tomorrow. We can't come back here tomorrow, the nasty woman shouted. We have some other boring tour to go on. So I guess we can't kiss that stupid stone, she said. Well now, the guide said, it is said that if you kiss someone who has kissed the stone, you'll have the same good fortune. And I suppose you've kissed the stone, the woman scoffed. No, ma'am, the frustrated guide said, but I have sat on it.
There's a workaround there.
Well, yeah, you can always figure out how to come up with a solution, right? Well, anyhow, that's it for this week. We thank Rodney for being our special guest. We appreciate everyone's business. We know spring's just around the corner. We hope that you and your family are healthy and safe. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney.